Doomsday Clock. We should get into it.
Yeah.
So this was a beefy issue. It was a little bit more expensive, of course. Although the page count increase was more than the price increase, if that makes sense. So page one, just it kind of like it's Manhattan's origin again. Him sort of thinking about that is the end is nigh. And this is the moment where Superman, because Superman was on his way at the end of the last issue, right? So Superman's already there. He's facing him down, and Manhattan says, "Hello, Superman," and Superman says, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, he doesn't even know who he is yet."
No, yeah. And remember, this all started with a nightmare from Clark, and Clark doesn't have nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is that coming to fruition.
What I like it, but this is obviously we're going to get to the point here where Superman's going to essentially inspire him and sort of try and make Manhattan feel hope. Is he does all that without knowing who he is, knowing where he comes from, knowing what his backstory is. He doesn't know anything about him, but he just tries to inspire him to be good regardless. It doesn't matter. Like,
right?
Because this is it. Manhattan offers him a binary choice. I'm the one you're going to destroy, or I'm the one who's going to destroy everything. So it's basically stop me or I ruin everything.
Right.
And someone's like, "Nah, that's bullshit." Third option.
Yeah. Because we have, the Markovians and the Russian heroes all showing up. We got Geoforce there. Black Adam shows up with the Kandak crew, and they're all there to sort of take in Superman for...
The Kandak crew sounds like a cheap TV show from there.
I feel like that's his version of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the Kandak crew.
Yes, and as all this is happening, because there's a lot of Manhattan narration through this, so there's a lot of things where he's just sort of, again, he's doing that thing where it's this date and this thing is happening. He mentions Superman picking up the car, back to the origin, the first origin, right? And we get some pieces around the world. The Justice League are just quote unquote missing because, as we know, they all went to Mars and effectively got disintegrated. And we're hearing about all these various crews around the world kind of coming in to do these things. Superman's still fighting all these villains on his own. And then we cut to Rorschach, we cut to Reggie, and we have, obviously, the red cap does not have any writing on it, but I mean, it's very clear what this guy's supposed to be,
I'm going to
right?
fill it in.
Yeah. And he starts beating up Reggie, assuming that he's a looter because he's looking at a TV through a window, and Alfred comes to save him. And this is the weird thing, the ending of this book maybe does kind of give us a way of explaining why things don't line up with what we've been reading in the comics up until now. Now, I'm not saying it's neat or that was always intended, but there's a door, there's a back door there.
There's I think that the stuff we'll get to with Earth 3 could answer it as well. That could just be the explanation in a weird way.
Which I love, and when we get to that, I love that writer's just going, "It's comics, bro."
Yeah. I'm so glad it addressed it though, because I was like, "What the hell? What's going on here?"
Also, Earth 3 was actually just in Young Justice, and that had a different, take on what was happening there as well. So a lot of things going on. So Alfred kind of saves him, and tries to give Reggie's mask back, and says, "Look, hey, you make this something different. You'll make this mean something." And he's like, "No. That's the monster's face, the monster's name. I'm not having this." And then he gets really morbid and depressed and really pessimistic, as Manhattan's also monologuing about this. And there's a big, because there's two page spreads in this. Obviously there's the big one later, but here we have one that's just all the villains who are attacking Superman, to the point where you don't even see Superman in the page. You just see all the villains.
He's swarmed.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at some people. You got Deathstroke's ex-wife. Was it Madeline?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's there. A lot of people I don't recognize, but I'm sure they are people.
Giganta up there, obviously.
Yeah, Giganta we recognize, obviously.
Yeah. But you also have Keenan. He's up there.
Oh, yeah, your Superman's up top. That's kind of cool.
Yep, he's up there. You have Black Adam. You got Vostok's getting thrown into a building. Yeah. It's a really cool page. It looks like Terra's over there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Shining Knight. There's
it's a great
cool
page, Frank.
It's chaos, personified. In DC, it looks like too.
Reggie's just got on about how the world's drowning in hate and anger. Gets very, very pessimistic as Lois is seeing in the news that Superman's fighting all these enemies alone because the Justice League isn't here. They're all dead essentially. Right. I mean, Batman's around. We see Batman in the next page, but everyone else is essentially dead right now. And Batman shows up to Reggie and apologizes for not sort of taking his warning seriously, and it essentially tries to convince him to take the mask because that's what his mentor at the hospital was kind of trying to do. Is like, no, make it your own thing.
Yep.
And so this is where things really start to get interesting. Though, is a car flies from the fight that's happening with Superman. A car flies over into this alleyway where a mother and daughter are sort of hiding behind a dumpster. And Superman just jumps in, and it's very reminiscent. The angle, you don't get the full shot of it, but the angle he catches it is very similar to the.
It's
reverse,
very hinted.
Actually.
Yeah.
It's reversed.
Yeah, in the sense that he's holding it with his hands, backwards, holding it back as opposed to throwing it forward.
Oh,
There's a
sure.
reversal
Okay, I
in
mean,
that
I
So
just
it's
meant,
still a call out. To
yeah,
that,
I just meant the angle,
the
angle of the car I meant, in the ways is the same as the old Action Comics cover. And Superman starts pleading with Manhattan, whoever you are, help these people. And Manhattan, and he's very cold, is like, I don't help you. And it's not that he doesn't want to. He's like, I don't. Oh no, like, I've seen this before.
I got very irritated with Manhattan here.
He's like, I've already seen this. I don't,
Yeah.
so I can't.
I don't
essentially,
help you. Yeah, but no, yes, you can control your destiny, man. Change the future.
Man, those panels of Superman, like blood dripping from his nose, and he says, I can't do this alone, and he's just pleading for help. Really, and this is all ramping up because this is the thing. The issue starts and Manhattan's like it's 10 minutes until Doomsday, basically, yeah. And then here it says 4 minutes now, less than 4 minutes, and I'm like, oh damn, we're really ramping up. We're getting really close to the bone in this. And he's remembering the giant squid and all that stuff from Watchmen. Lex is with Lois, and he's getting his vaporizer. Vibrational emitter out, that's what it was. I'm just trying to remember what it was called.
same thing.
And yeah, and we see the comedians with the Miami Marionette. More of that Batman and Reggie scene plays out. And again, so Batman's making his speech as Superman and Manhattan are also conversing. He's like, how can you stand there and not do anything? And Manhattan tells him enough to understand that my world is gone. My world once had a chance at peace, but after I left, it lost it. It fell into war, and it's burning now, even kind of thing. And worth mentioning, the end of that pulse says 12 seconds. So we're really we're getting to the point here where it's about to happen. Whatever's going to happen is within pages. So reading this, it's really ramping up, and you're just sitting there going, "Oh my god, like what's about to go down?" But yeah, and Manhattan ends this page by saying, I changed your life. The death of your parents is my fault. And I did that out of curiosity, and like you've got a choice. And again, it's back to this binary choice that he opened the book with: will you destroy me for it, or will I defend myself, even though I shouldn't? Right? And then next page, it drops a 9-panel grid. It gives you 3 panels. It's Superman looking angry, ramping up for a punch. Manhattan closes his eyes, which looks like he's going to accept death, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's interesting in itself. In that he's just before presented this choice: will I let you kill me because I know I should, suffer for my sins, or will I fight back regardless? And he's accepted his fate here. Yeah,
which does imply that he does at least feel some amount of guilt over it. Like there's some amount of understanding.
And I think the reason this is so interesting is this is the first time Manhattan has made a choice in decades.
Yeah,
because he's as far as he's concerned, everything he does, he's already done. So it's not a choice. It's it goes back to I don't help you. I've already seen it.
It's
now this leads up to where he can't see anything. So now.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's almost like because he can't see it, he doesn't know what it is. It's like the only way he was ever going to be able to make a choice again was by not knowing what was going to happen. Like the uncertainty had to be there. So the last panel on this page is Superman's fist coming towards the camera, as it were,
which we'd seen, in Manhattan's visions of what he knows what happens. It's his last moment, but in great John Zian and Frank fashion, Superman's not coming at Manhattan. No. You turn the page,
he punches,
and he's knocking out Posar, the evil Firestorm.
Posar.
Yeah, he's right behind him. He's punched right over Manhattan's shoulder, and Manhattan's, why would you defend me? He's confused.
I don't know. Yep.
And
I just love Superman.
Oh no shit. I'm shocked.
No, but I don't know what to think about this, but what I do know right now, you got to make a choice. So stop standing around, get into action, and let's go.
Yeah, and he's outright like, you said it was this or that.
Right.
But no, that's
the third choice.
Yeah, and he appeals to his world. He says, "Look, these photographs that keep sort of materializing. Who is she? Who's this woman? You clearly care about her." Is like maybe you can save her world. You know, maybe like maybe the reason why everything seems to end. Maybe it takes everything out of you to save your world, and presents this idea in Manhattan as all the villains are coming towards Superman, and he actually disintegrates like Black Adam and stuff, and he just says, "Yes, I understand now. Everything ends." And the very next page is we just get panels of various people all kind of turning blue. The panels go black. The Superman logo on his chest is kind of it's almost the end of it.
It's the last thing to fade.
It's almost like the end of Infinity War. It's just the dusting of the S logo, and then they really saved a lot of money on this page here in terms of the production, because this all black page I'm sure took a lot of effort.
It's an essential page.
but yeah. Normally I'd be mad, but this is essential for what's to come.
I'm just cracking a joke.
I actually love the way that this is a full single page of black, and then the next page is all black as well, but it's split into the 9-panel grid. So there's nothing, and then the universe is there. It's just not filled yet. The structure is there. It's just empty.
Yeah, and of course
then we get the reality.
Yeah, the page after that starts in black again, but then of course you see like a sort of planet kind of forming and crumbling. It's Krypton. I mean, it's clear it's Krypton from where it goes. But you see the ship, it begins with a child, and we see different versions of Clark's ship land in different parts of history, implying that there's universes out there where he landed in prehistoric times, where he landed in caveman times and stuff like that. Oh. And of course, the last one is kind of maybe the real original one that we all think of. Is
which is straight from Secret Origin, which I love, and this is where it really starts to come together, and why I love DC Comics. Yeah,
because we're seeing more of that car ride, the nightmare where Clark's parents,
with his parents,
we're going to end up dying, and we go back to this moment, and this, remember we lost our shit issue 6 or 7, whatever it was, when Manhattan just
moved the lantern.
Yeah, just casually said, "I moved the lantern," and now Alan Scott never became Green Lantern, and so he says that again. Then the very next panel, it's July 16th, 1940. I moved the lantern back, and it's like, oh, he just fixed it.
Yep, he just fixed it,
just
and
like
then
that.
The ripple effect of what this causes for Clark, for the greater DC universe.
Yeah,
I love that as someone that really gets into the continuity of stuff, right? Like so much so that sometimes it's to my own detriment, right? But the fact that there's an Earth with Superman but no Justice Society, and how much of a mess it's become, right? But then there's an Earth that Superman exists because of the Justice Society, right? That story.
More importantly than Superman exists, I think it's Superboy exists.
Right, that's what I'm getting.
We're jumping ahead here, right? Because the very next panel, to show the ripple of this, the very next panel is, again, Clark in the car with the parents in front. And instead of saying whatever he said originally, Jonathan says, "Hey, my father used to tell me stories of the Justice Society of America. And, that was decades ago, but if they were willing to go out and show who they were, maybe you should too." And it's basically inspiring Clark to maybe have the courage to be Superboy.
And it's also a refutation of the Man of Steel stuff.
I was going to get to that, yeah.
Yeah. Hide who you are and whatnot. Which, again, the whole metaverse concept is that's an Earth where Clark hides who he is, right? And look at how dark it gets.
It makes it equally valid in a way, and it makes every Elseworlds valid.
Right, exactly. But here, this is the mainline continuity, right? This is the one. This is what happens because his dad's like, "Hey, there was this wartime heroes, and do it, be the hero." And because he has this in his mind now, the car accident goes completely different.
Yeah, because he saved them. He jumps out and saves them as Superboy. And we start seeing more ripple effects where it's like, because Justice Society exists again, so does Superboy, and because Superboy exists again, he inspires the Legion. And Ozymandias starts freaking out because the Legion ring disappears, and this is the thing, is obviously we'll get to this in a minute, but the version of Satin Girl we had in this book no longer exists, because the version we see in a minute is actually the one that's currently happening in Bendis' book, right? Johnny Thunder disappears, realizing that he became the Thunderbolt himself. And
he says, "See you."
And Ozymandias is just sort of standing like, "John, what are you doing? What's happening here?" And all the villains are beating up Clark. We're back in the same moment. Black Adam's still there. It's almost as if reality's rewritten and caught up. I think Darren even says that. Yeah, the future and the past are free. Blah blah blah. It's like, but they've actually caught up back to the same part of the timeline. And just when Clark's down, because the actual Justice League are all still in Mars. We find out later because they all return soon. Because we get a panel of them saying, "Oh, they're just back from Mars." Superman turns around, then got a big double-page spread where he says, "Better late than never," and it's the Legion and the JSA all assembled. And it's both the JSA that we've been seeing in Justice League, but also the other characters that weren't there in Justice League. You know, the Stargirl, your newer legacy.
The John's Justice, to say.
Right, you have Liberty Bell, and I mean, you have Wesley Dodds there, you got Mr. Terrific, you got Jade Obsidian, Power Girl's there, the Tornado, what was her name? She was the Mach Uncle's granddaughter.
Yeah.
I forget her name, but she was in Johns' post Infinite Crisis Justice Society.
I actually think there is some stuff we could talk about with Infinite Crisis in this one, because we've been talking recently quite a bit about Infinite Crisis for one reason or another, and this is kind of in many ways a retelling of that bit with Superman.
It is, and because of what the vibrational frequencies are, right? Because of what the multiverse means, and that basically was the return of the multiverse, but not infinite, right? There's 52 worlds, and almost the metaverse refutes that now, and it puts it in line with the dark multiverse. And
I mean, it refutes it in a couple of different ways, actually, which we'll get into. Hell, even both Wildcats are there. You know, the newer one from
both
Crisis.
Wildcats,
right?
And then you look at the Legion, and this is the Legion from. So good on them for getting that.
Yeah, you've got like the new Lightning Lad in there.
Yeah. So So obviously, even though it's all these things coming back, it's kind of like this new reformed version that kind of mixes the old with a little bit of the new that's happened, right? And this is where the book gets really kind of weird and trippy, in the sense that it really kind of tries to make sense of that, and even the fact that we have these changes every so often, and we get into some serious stuff. So
this is the epitome of having your cake and eating it too, isn't it?
So we see them fighting Black Adam, and but John sort of stops paying attention to that, and I'm going to basically go through the panels of this next bit, because this next bit is so like mythology defining for DC Comics and the DC universe as a whole, that attention must be paid to this.
This is the point where we have to pray that DC takes this seriously and they use this. Don't just throw this out.
No, I don't think they will.
John, no, I feel like there's some murkiness because this took a long time to get done, and there's some murkiness because they had to go ahead with some other things. But I think especially since this clearly hints at 5G in a little bit, I think it's clearly that this is going to be incorporated in terms of the overall thinking.
But I also feel like. Well, like Connor just said too, but it's also, let's say 5G isn't a smashing success, right? Now they can fall back on the metaverse to fixing things.
It already tells us in here. It already tells us in here they're going to do that 5 years later anyway.
I think, do you know what is I know there's some people who are going to find that really cynical and be like, look, refresh every 5 years. But I think it's again, the last couple of months we've been going, we're kind of looking forward to 5G. We want that, shot of blood in the eye.
Yeah, we want a shake up. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you have Manhattan saying he's inspired, but so he says 1938, Superman lifts the car over his head. He talks about how it gets to the first crisis, Earth 2 is born, all this classic DC stuff. After the crisis, the Earth divides again. And this is where things start to get really interesting, is he says, Earth 1 becomes Earth 1985, a world unexplored even today. And basically what this is and what it looks like is that pre-crisis Earth continued on in its own universe. Right. There's a pre-crisis Earth where we have Supergirl with a headband, and we have those versions of those characters, those Bronze Age versions of the characters, essentially, continuing on. And this idea that the metaverse, or the multiverse even, actually keeps every version of the universes to preserve every era, as he puts it, of Superman. He kind of puts Superman, or I say that when I say he, I mean John's in this case, puts Superman at the center that the Earth's kind of, and the universes kind of revolve around.
As it should be.
Although I almost feel like there's opportunity there for some point for if Clark ever finds this out and Lois says, "Hey Clark, the world doesn't revolve around you." Actually, Lois, I think you'll find.
And not just our world, all of them.
it's at this point that I just like to recommend, if anyone hasn't read it, go and read Morrison's Super Gods, because it is this concept essentially of, it's the idea of American comics being the American mythology and Superman being the key to everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that makes sense with Johns and them working so close, on 52.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, I'm sure they, Morrison. This is Morrison's fingerprints all over it once you get to the multiverse stuff.
Joe's funny about this is that so much, like, not every single detail of the continuity that's established here is going to necessarily fit everyone's perfect version of DC or Superman's continuity. I know some people don't like the idea that there's superheroes before Superman, that he should be the first, and this clearly doesn't do that. It's the JSA first, which I'm okay with, for the record. I'm not complaining about that.
Me too.
But for me personally, I'm not a big fan of Superman being Superboy before he's Superman. I kind of like Superman being the.
I like him being Superboy in the 31st century, and that's where he has his adventures. And because
I like fair, nothing in this comic excludes Matt's version there.
Oh sure, right. But I just don't like him being Superboy at all. I like the idea that when he becomes Superman, that's really the choice and the journey to becoming that for the first time. But that's a personal preference. But it doesn't really matter that there's maybe some small details that don't quite line up with your perfect version.
I think what is key here though is it goes, there's an Earth out there that does.
Yeah, but it also makes it very clear that everything is important. It also feels like everything is about paying homage to the history of everything. So, and obviously DC's been on long enough, and there's all periods that we hate. I mean, hell, this page even establishes that there is a flash, there's the new 52 Earth that still exists, from before Rebirth, called Earth 52, which I never want to go there again. Let's stay away from that place.
No,
but
Perpetua, call me up. I'll tell you where it's at.
But I like that it exists in this context.
Yeah, because Manhattan makes it very clear that when the Flashpoint happened, that basically meant that the new universe, because the new universe is created for each one at the end of their time. So Flashpoint created the universe that has the post-crisis world in it. Rebirth happened, and that created the universe of the New 52. It separated it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the point where it diverges because of that point. That's where it's bottled essentially and locked off and put on a different path and continues in its own way. Yeah,
which is really exciting because it means that theoretically we could have a whole series of Elseworlds if a writer wants to go to a specific, continuity. They can just do it.
It's actually funny. We got that Giff and Lemire book. What was that? What? Yeah, that's kind of that, right?
Post invasion.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess it kind of is.
So I just want to let you guys know that if they start releasing post-Infinite Crisis era books, that's all I'm reading. That's my jam. Like that right before Infinite Crisis to after Infinite Crisis, those are my favorite books. So DC, you want to put those out? You got a person. Like
you may get one or two, Matt. You're not going to get enough to fill your whole comic reading needs.
DC, prove them wrong.
So there's a big almost full page spread of Superman with Batman and various teams. Notably we've got a classic Batgirl outfit and we've got Nightwing in his blue, proper outfit.
Got a guy
Donna Troy.
There's a guy Gardner.
I don't see a Kyle Rayner there, do you, Connor?
No.
But I see a Jessica Cruz. So
we've got Alan Scott, we've got Hal, we've got John, we've got Jessica,
Stewart.
we've got Guy. It's just Simon and Kyle that aren't there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So okay, the book's not perfect. They could replace a guy with Kyle, and it would be perfect. Anyway, so this is where things get really interesting because John starts just dating things for the future, which is oddly ballsy in a comic book. So let's go through these, right? So in the year 2020, Superman's timeline is bombarded with the reckless energies of the old gods, once again warping the universe. So 2020 is next year, right?
Right.
And that'll start 5G. And that'll make sense in a second because remember the 5G world is created when it ends, right? Which is why this is the start of 5G. And it says it's July 2nd, 2025, a crisis unlike any the metaverse has ever seen. They will call the Time Masters will erupt.
It says it just says one they will call Time Masters erupts.
Okay,
as if that's the name of the crisis. But I think it's interesting given that Rip Hunter's in a different book this week.
Sure. But it says, but then in its wake, Superman is revitalized and his greatest allies return. So if the rumors of 5G replacing a lot of the characters with other versions of them is true, then it's telling us right now they're all back in 2025.
Yep.
At the latest.
Well, yeah. And I see Dick Grayson wearing the blue Nightwing suit, so all's good in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Superman's revitalized, Dick's running around. It's great.
Is that Batwing at the top now in a new outfit?
It looks like it.
Looks like it.
Yeah.
Also, I want to point out, look over by the flashes, and you got someone dressed like a turtle.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if is that the turtle baby that Grodd's been hanging around with?
It's an ally. It's all grown up.
Yeah, like because time, because the Speed Force and time distillation and whatnot. So.
No, some interesting stuff. And then it says January 2026, the timeline is restored. Earth's 5G is born. So that's the end of 5G. Right. So the crisis that happens in 2025, leads to 2026, and that's the end of 5G, presumably, right? Now, admittedly, not all this is locked in stone, but I'm sure that
that's 6 months. That's a 6-issue event.
Yeah. This part here, though, everything we've just talked about, that's 2020, 2025. I believe this plan is roughly in place right now. It may change, but I think there's actually some truth behind what he's saying here of what the rough plan is for the timeline, right? And then he throws in some other wacky things here. 2030, Secret Crisis, and that title's perfect when you actually realise what he's joking and teasing about here. Throwing Superman into a brawl across the universe with Thor himself. Now, Thor, of course, isn't just Marvel Thor. There's lots of Thor, because Thor's free to use.
So you kind of go, I mean, it's on your mind as soon as you hear Thor, but you go, oh, sure, whatever.
And a green behemoth, stronger than even Doomsday, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. So he's straight up teasing, like, Marvel, DC Crisis.
So who's the invaders, right?
Oh, who knows?
Like, man, I got to know who kills Hulk.
I mean, because if Hulk's protecting Superman, clearly they're fighting side by side against some other villainous entity.
Yeah, and you have two of my favorite Marvel characters with my favorite DC character. What is going on, Johns? Get out of my head.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I think this is probably just a wink, wink. Let's have a joke at this point. Cause...
I think everything from this point on.
Yeah.
The one that I was not sure. Yeah, I think Matt's just about to say is June 17th, 2026.
Yes, of course. Yes, it is. Superman goes on a quest to find Bruce Wayne's lost daughter so she can save Bruce's son. So Damien's in a rough place, so the long lost sister of Damien needs to help him.
So is that Helena Wayne, right? Is this that version of Huntress going forward?
I mean, it's a solid idea.
Dark Damien.
I mean, given where Batman and Catwoman are, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for them to have a kid. Like,
right?
I mean, literally some timey-wimey nonsense to make it work. I mean, age-wise,
Damien was timey-wimey nonsense in his own way.
That's true.
He is.
Well, it wasn't until we had Flashpoint.
Right.
Well, sure. But
no, I always love though that idea of Morrison going back again. Morrison went and found this moment where Talia and Bruce did the deed in the desert, and then it was out of continuity, but then he put it in a continuity, right? Like,
sure. So you're saying that we could just say, okay, Batman and Catwoman had one random encounter, X number of years ago, and here we are.
Right.
That's possible.
But also it's each of these going forward though is because it says no matter how many times Superman's existence is attacked, he will survive.
Yeah, we go through a number of
change is constant.
Yeah, we go through a number of different. We see 2038, we see 2045, and there's versions where the Kents already have a baby. There's versions where they don't. And it just keeps happening and happening. No matter what, Superman always happens, and he's always there to kind of anchor everything, and eventually get things back on track. And this kind of inspires him, and it's basically this. And this is kind of where it gets to the point where it reveals what Ozymandias' plan the whole time has been: is he wanted Superman to inspire Manhattan, so that Manhattan would be inspired to save their world. Essentially, Manhattan is inspired to make sure his world has a Superman, and obviously we'll get to that properly at the very end.
It's kind of a great plan,
because that is why that Earth goes so off the rails. Is because there's no Superman.
Yeah.
Right. That's the subtext there, and so to answer the question of how is Superman relevant in 2019, 2020, Geoff Johns just gave it to you, right?
Again.
Hope's the North Star in the metaverse, right? All of these things work out because we want good in the world, right? Like, yes, the world can be a real shit place sometimes, but in a place where we can go to get lost, and at least this is how I read it, to get lost in them, it's always good when Superman's around to be the good that we all want to see in the world. And he does change worlds just with his presence there. And, Alan Moore, that was kind of his point, right? Where what if superheroes existed in the real world of the 1980s?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Manhattan rounds up the various Watchmen characters. Comedian actually gets blasted back to his world from Lex, although notably he goes back to the time he left, which was when he was falling out the window, so he just goes back to his death.
Well, and that's after he shoots Ozzy.
Yeah. Well, it's just Ozzy first, but yeah, Ozzy survives anyway. So what's interesting though, so Manhattan sends the others back. He's sending the other characters back, but notably not Mime and Marionette, which is where things get interesting. And Reggie makes sure that Ozymandias is not going to die. He's stopping the bleeding because, no, you're going to pay for your crimes. You're going to go to prison. Despite the fact that you might have, saved our world, it doesn't change what you did, which is interesting.
I think it's interesting that it kind of parallels with Manhattan earlier in the issue, making that choice to... He's aware he did terrible things. So maybe he accepts his fate. And it's kind of the same sort of thing here.
Mm-hmm. I'm just... Again, parallels with a TV show, so I'm going to say anything for spoiler's sake.
Okay. But, please don't. I've not started it
yet. So that's interesting. But Manhattan says, "I'm not taking you two with me," and that is Mime. So Mime and Marionette are staying in the DC universe, which is very interesting. And he says that you're going to have a daughter, and you will see your son once again, but your son's going to need an anchor in this world like I did. And we get kind of into that. And this is where it goes back to Carver Coleman. And Manhattan goes back and sort of this he was his anchor and says, I've not been a good friend. And we find out that Carver Coleman actually has now went on to have a fairly... I mean, he did sort of like, have a rough patch. But he came back. He was an actor again. He won Oscars. He became an advocate for gay actors and... like all these things. It gives this kind of almost feel good sort of element to his story.
I like the way that it twists it as well, because Manhattan he just says, it's the point where he's like, the reason that you're not going to be here a year from now is because I won't be here, so you won't need to be here, essentially.
Right.
So he kind of does it in a way
that diner for their annual meeting, because but I do like that because it keeps going within Nathaniel Dusk, where it says the marathon for the late star. And then, like what Pete was saying, it goes on to what he did with his life and how much good it has done
and
for others.
And it shows that knock-on effect of Superman inspiring Manhattan, and then Manhattan inspiring Carver Coleman to sort of lead this life and accomplish what he accomplished.
And that transitions into other stuff like the JSA coming back out, into the public light is the generational team that we know. Yeah,
Justice League are obviously back from Mars as well. It mentions that here.
It talks of impeaching the president in a very, very timely
way. We have Superman and Lois actually going to see the Kents. The Kents are visiting Metropolis. So not only are they back in terms of not dying in his youth, they're both still alive now. We see them there in present day. They're back.
Also, Wonder Woman wants a new version of the Global Guardians.
Right, which that's cool. I like that. Yeah. And because they've, and each country is designating a person, and so it lists all of those, which is super cool. But when we get to the Kents, I'm not gonna lie, I shed a tear. I'm sitting reading this at work because I started it at home, but then had to leave, and then I get to work, and I'm in my office, single tear rolling down my cheek because that scene of them hugging, it means the world to me that they're back.
I think I turned up a little bit. It wasn't that point, though. It was before that when it was all just how important Superman is to everything and all that stuff.
So but Pete, I'd known that.
So Manhattan...
That wasn't new to me.
Well, no, it wasn't new to me either, you tit. But so Manhattan goes back to his Earth. All the chaos and destruction from what we saw in the end of the first issue. And we see him start to grow, basically life. He starts growing stuff out the ground and Chloe starts to fix things. We find that Ozymandias does go to prison on that Earth. Reggie kind of like thanks his father at his grave for kind of inspiring him.
Wasn't Byron Lewis the Mothman guy?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So he thanks Thor because there's a moth in that panel where he says thank you.
Yeah, I misspoke.
Gotcha.
So yeah, but he talks about maybe Marinette, at the bank and why he didn't kill the kid, and he's kind of foggy as to the exact details of how this happened. But basically, Manhattan's the one who took the kid, and we already kind of had the hint from before that he gave the kid to Laurie and Dan, right?
Right.
But this kind of goes further with it and explains that he essentially put his essence and his powers into this kid. And we see him fade away from existence as he's doing this. And the book ends with this kid showing up at the doorstep of Laurie and Dan, who've got their daughter already. The daughter opens the door, and we have little boy... in my head I'm thinking little boy John, and the final page is him saying, "John calls me Clark," and that's the end of the book. He's basically made this kid with his own powers, this Earth Superman, and given him to a couple that he knows can raise them in the same way that Martha and Jonathan Kent raised Clark. Yeah. So that is the ultimate ending to Doomsday Clock.
I kind of love how they had an owl clock.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
I love, and that the time is past 12, right? It's like 2 past. Like we've made it through the Doomsday Clock resets. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love that page too, because it also with him, his mind wanders back to what could have been, and you see him just be like, yeah, I'll leave the watch in there. It's fine, and then so he somewhat gets a happy ending, right? Like the man that caused all of this, gets to fade off.
He has a quick daydream about like, what if he'd got married and had kids and that life had played out. But yeah, I mean, we always kind of assumed this was going to end with Superman, making Manhattan hope again,
talking his way out of it.
Yeah. And so it's not necessarily surprising. Obviously, the big story here is really all this stuff about how things will always find a way to sort of come back to what they should be, and Superman being the center of that. And then obviously the actual tease for, hey, we're actually going to do 5G. That is like that. Obviously, we'd heard rumors for a while. This is the first time, no, officially it's happening because it's just get mentioned in a book.
Yeah. And there was you brushed over just the other character, Nostalgia.
Yes.
That was introduced here.
Which is again, it's the cycle, right?
Yeah.
Of she gets obsessed with Ozymandias, so because she goes and visits him, Bobatus finds her, standing out of his prison, and then she becomes Nostalgia, and whatever that means. And having seen the show, that has a completely different meaning from the show.
Yeah, that moment felt really weird to me having watched the show because I was like, oh, okay.
But also, I know from the original Watchmen, Nostalgia was a scent put out by Beats Company too, so it smelled like whatever you wanted it to smell like. That's why it was so popular. Like it was this weird chemical, and that's why it was called that. But the amount of Superman, I've heard complaints about this book where people being like, "Oh, I wanted it into the Doomsday Clock story. I didn't need an essay on why Superman's great." And I was like, that was the start of the book. Like it's been also, there.
You always need an essay why Superman's great, no matter what.
I mean,
you can always have another one of those.
But like, I saw that complaint on Twitter. I'm just like, I think you're missing the point of this, dude. Like, it's been there as soon as the metaverse concept was introduced, and you can kind of once you see it all fall into place, that was Ozymandias' thing, was like, we need a Superman to inspire this world, so it's not a complete shit show.
Yeah, like, I put a tweet on the DC Comics Twitter, so at DC Comics Podcast is our Twitter, and just asking what people thought of it. Yeah. And there was obviously people were generally quite positive, but there was a couple of questions, and one of them was like, okay, how exactly does this fit into continuity? And I think the weird thing here is the way this ends and talks about how things have kind of reset. It does almost, like, in a weird way, like, I'm not sure exactly when the other books are officially in the post-Doomsday Clock continuity, but the way it happens, and it's like, okay, you could technically just say it happens before Alfred dies, and that's why Alfred's here.
I think this is why I want to just talk about. I'm touching on another book here, but the Earth 3 stuff that we're going to get to later, and we see the crime syndicate And we address, oh, didn't they die in Forever Evil? And the explanation is the multiverse needs to fix itself. There are things that just need to be the way they are, and maybe Alfred is one of those things.
And then also in that you have Rip Hunter talking about how hypertime's broken, and that usually time is fixed, right? Like the past and the future, and he says in that one there's something going on. So was that a reference to stuff that has happened in this book? Was it?
I wonder if there will be like a definitive moment in the rest of the books where maybe it'll be the end of Year of the Villain. Maybe it'll be whatever the next event is that kind of clearly defines that, okay, we're definitely in the post-Doomsday clock. Or is it more kind of fluid right now because of the way some of this stuff's already started happening?
I suspect it'll be Snyder's Crisis.
Yeah. But I feel like it does ultimately mostly work. There's just a couple of weird things, and Alfred being one of the main ones, obviously.
Yeah.
But
we can just undo that later.
That's the beauty of this book. It's like, all the shit's gonna get undone. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
And that's comics. That's the cycle. Like I made that joke about only wanting to read that era of comics because I go back and read it, and there is a nostalgia factor, right? And that it doesn't hurt that some of the best comics, I feel, you have Rucka and Wade and John's all at DC at the same time. You know what I mean? And they're all working on a lot of good stuff. But as a comic fan, I know this era is only going to last so long, and then it's going to go to a new one. And hopefully it's a little bit closer to Rebirth than it is to New 52. But it's just something that you have to go with, and maybe you don't always read books.
Hopefully it's closer to any era and not New 52.
Because those are the next two. Yeah. But I stopped reading Superman at a certain point, and it sucks, but it just goes to you can become this jaded fan that, they don't make comics like they used to. Or you're just like, they don't make comics like they used to because they make comics like they do now. Man, I guess that's all just the whole thing. It's like, read what you want to read, right? Comics are going to keep going.
It's worth mentioning that when I asked people for opinions on Twitter, it wasn't a ton of responses, but every single person who did respond did it in at least 2 or 3 tweets. There was no one who was able to do it in a single tweet. Everyone had to do blocks of text and several tweets because that was the only way they could do it. So everyone essentially has an opinion on this if you care enough about the DC universe that you're interested in what it's doing to it. And I think we're all excited about certain things. I mean, and the state of the DC universe right now is not too bad. Like, there's definitely things I'm not enjoying, but there's a lot of things I am enjoying. We have, obviously, the Black Label stuff is really spacing things up. Well, of course, they're all like continuity, but they're really good. Certainly, I am definitely ready for Scott Snyder to not be the one driving the flagship. I really am at this point.
Me too.
But this is the thing. There are a lot of things that we're all enjoying, and a lot of these are out of continuity books. And the mainline continuity, I think we're not hating it. There's nothing like, this is all terrible, but it's not. A lot of it's not massively exciting right now, which is why we're looking forward to. 5G. Let's give this a shot of adrenaline and get going again.
We're less enthused as we were at the beginning because when you have a new start, it's exciting, right? Yeah. Like I remember doing that first show after that WonderCon, right? About all these, Josh Williamson's coming to Flash. He was handpicked by Johns and whatnot. And what's this? There's going to be a big event that it's building up to, and they were kind of hinting at metal even as far back then. So, but yeah, and now we have that with 5G for whatever this means going forward. John's put it to paper here. So we know it's coming 100%.
I mean, I can see because Rebirth had that. Rebirth had that event where they went through like almost all the books that were going to come out in the first several months and announced all the teams, and it was and they all came to be. I was forgetting there's probably going to be an event before then. But this book did say 2020.
It did. So that's true.
So at the very least, I think the event, which might be this crisis that leads to it, is definitely in 2020.
I want to know what these old god energies are. Like, what does that mean? Is this like the Fourth World style stuff? Is this
I was wondering,
Wonder Woman? What is this?
Are they going to try and tie that into like the Perpetua sort of stuff and
Right.
go down that angle
Yeah.
and go there, the oldest gods, so to speak?
Right. So whatever it is, I'm excited. I love DC events, for better or worse. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Although the quicker we get away from this Perpetua shite, the better.
I mean, well, the end's close, so. But yeah, I'm there. Justice Doom War was way too long. Like,
yeah, I just looking ahead, like I do think they're more or less going to adhere to this. It's just a case of like how much of a sort of soft inclusion or defining point is going to be used for it. But reality does warp at the end. Technically, we don't see Alfred after Manhattan resets reality again. So there's an argument to be made that Alfred's technically dead at the end of this book as well.
And it's Dr. Manhattan's fault. Get him.
I could live with that. As much as we don't want Alfred to be gone. He'll be back at some point. And we know we're having Lucius for a while. That's okay.
I mean, hell, if there's a disappointment here, it's that it doesn't outright fix the Wally shite from Heroes in Crisis. that's the
no, but he's still running with the Flash family in that image.
And the future image,
which,
yeah.
And
is that? But is that just John's because we know he loves Wally?
Well, I mean, that image where that's all happening, the implication from the text I got was that this was 2026 when all the allies came back. That was the feeling I got from just because of the panels that were, or the text boxes were on that panel.
Well, if it takes 6 years to fix Wally, then I mean, that's the price.
No, I'm with Pete on this one. I think that's the end of the 2025 crisis because, like I say, the new Batwing outfit. I would not be surprised if that's what we see in if in 5G we get Luke as Batman, if that's his Batman outfit.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So now I'm looking forward to things. If anything, I'm just annoyed we have to go through possibly a Snyder crisis to get to 5G.
Yeah, but like
that was basically a Snyder crisis, and that was great.
Yeah, but we did it already.
I'm tired of him being so damn wordy. So like John's. Sure, it can be wordy, but I never not felt the flow in Doomsday Clock. And I feel with Snyder, and that's why they're such different writers, sometimes I'm like, all right, we get it. This is a textbook, man.
I'm not going to lie. I think part of this is Frank
that's too
having that perfect pacing. And then
I
think in the sense that, him and Johns have done this together. They know exactly what it is. They've been involved at every step. Whereas with Justice League, how many artists have been on that book? And don't get me wrong, there's been some very good art, but none of them have been the storytellers in the way that Frank has been. They've been facilitating the story. They've not been the collaborator in the same way.
Yeah. Oh well, okay. I guess we're at the point of rating Doomsday Clock.
Just 3/10s. So just get out of the way.
I'm fairly certain it's 3/10s. I mean,
mine's not.
He's going to give it an 11 or 12.
Oh yeah, it was something stupid.
It's 10.5. How dare you?